It's a somber moment with the war in Ukraine and the aggressive attack by Russia on Ukraine, and our hearts go out to the many RPCVs who've served there over the last 30 years, close to 3,500 returned Peace Corps volunteers that have served during that time. And I know that this is a very difficult moment for them. We stand in solidarity with those returned volunteers, but also with the people of Ukraine. And so we'd like to take a special moment here to show some solidarity for Ukraine. And I'd like to just ask my colleague, Stephen Saum, who's our Director of Strategic Communications and our editor of WorldView magazine, and also is a Ukraine returned Peace Corps volunteer, to share a moment with us in reflection on Ukraine. Stephen?
Right. Thank you, Glenn, and thank you all for being here this evening. An important time for the Peace Corps community, a hopeful time for the Peace Corps community with volunteers about to return to service overseas, but for Ukraine and for everything that the Peace Corps stands for, a very fraught moment as well. All the efforts of building peace and friendship, all the work of building democracy, and people trying to choose their own destiny over decades. If we could, for just a moment, take a moment of silence for those who have already perished in the past week, hundreds or thousands of Ukrainians who have died. Thank you. I served in the Peace Corps in Ukraine from 1994 to 96. And shortly after I finished my Peace Corps service there, I went to work for the US Embassy directing academic exchanges. So I've been a part of Ukraine for the past 30 years. But I went to visit a military base in Khmelnytsky in Western Ukraine, where they were in the process of, they were setting up a ceremony for the final destruction of a missile silo that once held a nuclear missile pointed at the United States. It was a very hopeful moment because there would be the ceremony with a couple of US senators, and then the following year, the Secretary of Defense would come to Ukraine to plant a sunflower as a symbol of hope, where something beautiful might grow where once there have been the seeds of destruction. But those nuclear weapons were given up as part of an agreement that was supposed to guarantee Ukraine's security. And if Jocelyn, if we can go to the next slide, I'd like to play you a video from another Peace Corps volunteer who was in Ukraine, came shortly after I did, Rory Finnan, who's now one of the world's leading scholars in Ukrainian studies at Cambridge University, to tell you a little bit more about that.
We here in Britain need to care for a principled reason and a practical reason. The principal reason is that in 1994, Ukraine had the third largest nuclear arsenal in the world, something like 1,700 warheads. Ukraine gave up that nuclear arsenal in exchange for security guarantees from the United Kingdom, United States, and of course, Russia. That was the so-called Budapest Memorandum of 1994, because the term in the Budapest Memorandum was to provide assistance if Ukraine was ever a victim of aggression, which it is. The other issue is practical. It goes back to this notion of Ukraine being the largest country within the continent, a country with over 40 million people, with vast human capital, economic potential, and also this very tenuous position between Russia and the EU. Coming to grips with that from a practical perspective is important for us here in Britain as well. And our analysis sometimes has taken the bait on the NATO question from the Kremlin. Russia has taken a view that grievance and victimization is what powers their domestic and foreign policy. And in looking at this problem with respect to Russia's troop buildup, it's not for nothing that they're not amassing troops on Estonia's border. It's not for nothing that they're avoiding amassing troops on the Bering Strait. They're not challenging NATO in that respect because Ukraine is weaker and it's vulnerable. This is a geopolitics of aggression that threatens everyone. It doesn't just threaten Ukraine, it threatens us here, because the moment we surrender the ideals of an international legal order and we go back to this framework of might makes right, we're all in trouble.
Rather than talking about things on a purely macro and geopolitical level. We have here this evening for a brief discussion a couple of folks from the Peace Corps community to bring a personal perspective. Olena Sergeeva was the director of the education program for the Peace Corps when I served. She helped to set it up in Ukraine, and it began that remarkable work that's taken place for the last 3 decades. And Janis served as a Peace Corps volunteer in Khmelnytsky, Ukraine from 2004 to 2006, working with an organization helping members of the Jewish community in Ukraine. And so I'd like to talk here briefly with them, to have them bring some of their personal perspective to what is happening, why it matters, what this tragedy truly means, and what we can do here in the Peace Corps community, and why we need to. Olena, thank you so much for taking the time this evening. I know this is a very difficult time for you personally, for some of the things that your family has had to deal with as part of this. Can you tell me maybe a place to start? I think that people can really understand. You have a nephew right now who's really in harm's way.
Right. So, well, first, let me tell you that I am in the US right now, in Seattle, and actually staying at the house of first Peace Corps director in Ukraine, Arlene Mitchell, who set up operations in Ukraine, and we became, first I worked there as assistant, then I became a program manager for education TOEFL program, and we became good friends for life. When the news of potential aggression were intensifying, me and her discussed, maybe potentially coming here, but of course, in my view, this was like really extra, precaution, hoping that I'm just getting a ticket and come back. Well, now obviously I'm not coming back, and I am very relieved to learn as of basically a few hours ago that my daughter crossed the border to Poland, because all these days she was in Kiev, in the very center of Kiev, and I was tormented by the thought that I should have insisted. I offered her to go with me, but she didn't want to, insisted on bringing her here. My nephew right now, who is my godson also, and he served in the army a year ago, and in the Western Ukraine. And it's a harsh, serving in the army is not a fun trip, right? So it's been a harsh experience for him, and he was so happy to be over with the army and start, his life. I helped him to get into finance investment business. He was learning some things related to cryptocurrencies and stuff. And when the war started, him and his dad, my sister's husband, they both joined the army, and my godson became a part of the special unit, which basically means he's going to face the enemy right there. And we spent last 3 days with my sister trying to figure out where the heck can we get the bulletproof vests for him. And obviously no country's system is set up for private citizens to buy bulletproof vests, so we didn't really succeed in trying to find it all over the world and in Kiev. I think her friend in the United Kingdom found some on eBay of all the places, which seem to have the necessary level of protection. And she will be getting them in the United Kingdom, then she'll need to figure out how to ship them to Ukraine, which is a huge challenge right now. And even if you ship it to Ukraine, how does it make it to him? He's somewhere, we don't know where. I haven't heard from him for 2 days. And I'm afraid even to try to text him. I hope he's alive right now. And his dad, who never had any military training, never hold a gun in his hand, he's also now in the army. And it's not just a defense unit that patrol the streets or something. It's the real army. It's the real thing. So, and when I talked to my sister today, for example, just to give an understanding what's going on, she's in Zhytomyr, That's a city to the west of Kiev, like 100 miles from Kiev. That's where I'm from originally. My mom is there, 78-year-old. My sister is there with her other son and a daughter. They just learned that the school was bombed over the night in the center of the city. It's the school that was used to be the best school in the city. And they also learned that the hospital where like my son was born, for example, had an explosion. So my very old uncle who used to work in that hospital and my nephew, they went there to try to clear the clutter. While I was talking to her, she said that she went to try to get groceries and there was sirens. So all people dropped everything, like groceries, money, whatever, and ran, trying to hide in the nearest shelter. She said this was really, really scary. And then when I talked to her, we heard gunshots. So she said, I hear shots. So, I'm stopping talking. So I don't know. I did hear from her later. And again, she is right now tormented by the decision to be made. Does she take her daughter and another child of the friend who just moved to that same house because she lived next to that school that was bombed? Does she take both of those kids and try to flee? Which means that our mom stays on her own, and basically her son, her oldest son who serves in the army, and her husband just staying there, right? And or whether she should stay. And this is just to give you an idea of what each and every family goes through right now. It's like every single family has, like, do we help the army? Do we protect our houses? Do we run because we're gonna be killed? And so yeah, I don't want to say any cliche things like this is horrible, but this is horrible. And the emotions and division and hatred, like leading to the situation where you watch the video of dead Russian soldiers and you feel happy because it's people who came to take your land and kill your children and your mothers and so on. This is just overwhelming to say the least. So I'm happy I'm here, that I have safety, but I'm very sad for the country and for everything the war does to all the people there. I've seen U.S. Embassy, and I'm sorry if I'm talking too long, Steve. You let me know, okay? So I've seen. I graduated from university when Soviet Union collapsed. So I've seen U.S. Embassy coming into Ukraine, and I've seen Peace Corps coming into Ukraine. And I was lucky to start working for Peace Corps when I was as a first job in my life. But now I've seen them leaving, and it's just devastating.
Yeah, thank you, Olena, for sharing that. I mean, it's very, very hard personally, and as you said, absolutely horrific. What is happening on such a huge scale? I mean, Jeffrey, I think one of the things that you and I have talked about is, of course, the very frightening fact that Putin has talked about denazification. And what that means in a country led by a president who's Jewish, and where Russian shells or rockets have hit the memorial of Babin Yar.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. I'm not sure there's a question there, or you just want me to comment on that. I mean, I think it's really important to understand that Putin is telling his soldiers, you're going to protect these people. You're going to liberate them from the Nazis. And they go there and they thought that this was going to be easy because they thought that the Ukrainians were going to kind of roll over and say, sure, okay, well, we want to get rid of the Nazis. But the kind of irony is it's actually both the president, but also the prime minister is also Jewish.
So it's the only country in the world next to Israel that the top two leaders are Jewish. And so when you talk about kind of getting rid of the neo-Nazis, it's a certain irony. But I just also want to point out, you mentioned that Babi Yar. So in September of 1941, almost 34,000 Jews were killed over 2 days in Babi Yar. And it was a ravine. And it actually was always known as the largest ravine of where mass Jews were killed during the Holocaust. And actually over about 150,000 people were killed at that ravine, which included Ukrainians and Romas and physically and mentally disabled people. And so when he bombed Babi Yar, he was claiming he was bombing Babi Yar because that's where the TV towers were. But I have to say, I have a friend who posted on Facebook that the poor souls who were in those mass graves have now had to die twice in a horrible way. And it's just something that it breaks my heart. As Stephen mentioned, I was working at a Jewish organization in Ukraine. I'm still very close with a lot of people there. I'm very close with the chief rabbi of the progressive movement. And it's very scary. I know last night I read out the statement that Zelensky made, and I think maybe I'll do that again tonight. Is that okay, Stephen? So Zelensky released a statement yesterday, and he did it in Hebrew. So if you notice, he's actually doing also, he's doing speech, he speaks Ukrainian and he speaks Russian and he speaks English, but I've been seeing him doing interviews, and also obviously Hebrew. But he did a statement yesterday calling for the Jews around the world to speak out about the attacks in Ukraine. And I'm going to quote what he said. He says, "I am now addressing the Jews of the world. Don't you see what is happening? This is why it is very important that millions of Jews around the world do not remain silent now. Nazism is silence. So shout about the killing of civilians, of Ukrainians." So I think it's important just to really understand what is going on there. And I would just want to add on that my host family, who I'm still very close with, I go back about every 2 years to visit them. And the granddaughter, who's now 21, she has decided she wants to leave. And I am in the process of trying to, I've guaranteed her that if she can get herself out of Ukraine and into another country, that I will take care of her. And I actually very happy to announce that I actually have very close friends who live in Portugal who have agreed that she can live there indefinitely if she can get out. So it's very much top of mind for those of us who are connected to this.
Yeah, thank you, Jeffrey. And I know my colleagues will paste over here in the chat some links where you can help. NPCA, we put together a statement last week, both calling this horror for what it is, this invasion, this unprovoked war that Ukrainians did not start and did not want. It includes links and information on some of the things that the RPCV Alliance for Ukraine has been doing. And there's an advocacy action for those who want to write your senators, members of Congress, and the president. I do know I saw that posted that there is a group of senators, Democrats and Republicans, are going to meet with Zelensky tomorrow by Zoom at 4:30 Kyiv time. So you can, use that advocacy link. There are also links to organizations you can donate to, and of course, raising your voices and speaking out, whether that's in person at protests, whether that's on social media, or that's writing to your members of Congress.
Can I say one other quick thing, Stephen? I just want to say one of the things that keeps hitting me, and I've said this to many friends, we are returned Peace Corps volunteers. And I have to say to everyone, the name peace is the name of who we are. This is what we're about. We are all about peace. And when people kind of say, why is this so hard on you? My response is, well, yes, it hits me because I served in Ukraine. But I would guess that every person on this call is hitting you because we all believe in peace. And that's what we're about.
That's Olena, I'd like to give the last word to you. And I think, but before you do that, I had the pleasure of meeting your father, the privilege of meeting him when I came back as election observer a few years ago. And he met me at the bus stop in downtown Zhytomyr and walked me to the apartment. We went by the Soviet War Memorial, and there's a tank which happens to have its barrel pointing west. And he joked then, like, this is pointing the wrong way. It should be pointing at Putin. Of course, he was exactly right. But he's no longer with us.
Yeah. And, just the other day, I was in a car and I had this flash of thought, I should call my dad to tell him what's happening, that my daughter is making it out of Kiev. Then I recall that that I can't really call him. And there is something that, between me and my friends that becomes like a saying now, like you talk to someone, like I talked to my friend yesterday and I said, I'm so happy my dad is dead, that he doesn't see this happening. And this friend of mine said, I have the same feeling about my mom and my grandma. It's just so good they're no longer here. This is so horrifying that you actually happy you have, the people that you loved are not are not seeing it. Or when I talked to my daughter who was packing, she today when I talked to her when she was in Poland, she said, I feel that the jeans and a sweater she has on, it's like my skin, because I sleep in them, I work in them for some days now. So and when she was fastly packing to leave first Kiev, and then she moved on later to further places, she and I also said, well, it's good, it's so good our cat died, right? We don't need to worry about that, because my cat was with me for 16 and a half years and the cat died last October, but now it's like a happy news. It's not there, because many people have to just drop their animals, pets, cats, dogs, and just leave them in the houses, in the apartments, or in the street. And someone I know said that he hears these dogs all night long now barking there in the streets, and he's trying to feed some of them. And another friend said that his sister in I think it's in Kiev, or maybe it's in a different big city, but she lives in a 12-story building, and she said, looks like I'm the only one who stayed right now in this building. Like there are no people in the building, just her. It's just horrifying. And of course, like everything I worked for, and right now I just don't mean just philosophical and principles and all of that, but also some material things. I had like apartment and the garden and a little summer house. It's all like, and so it's Thank you really for having me here, and it's really, I really respect Peace Corps. I think Peace Corps is wonderful organizations, and feel free to reach out to me. We can, I can share my, I guess, email or something, right?
Yeah, and folks can always reach through me. We can.
Yeah. So or I can put in chat, right? My email also. So if you wanna stay connected or something, or if you I'll be happy, because Peace Corps is great, and I hope this horrifying nightmare will end sooner rather than later.
Thank you so much, Olena, and thank you, Jeffrey. I think many folks here, if you're connected to Ukraine, you know that the national anthem of Ukraine is "Ще не вмерла Ukraine," right? Ukraine has not perished yet. It's up to us to help make sure that does not happen. So thank you for being here. Slava Ukraini.
Thank you very much, Stephen, for joining with Jeffrey and Olena. Thank you for joining us this evening for that moment of reflection. We stand with you in solidarity for the people of Ukraine. We hear you. There's 3,500 returned Peace Corps volunteers who have very likely similar stories and connections and concerns about family members and friends back in Ukraine. And our hearts go out to all of you. And as Jeffrey said, this is this is why we do what we do. We're peace builders. We are in the business of making peace and building peace. And so that is why this moment for all of us returned Peace Corps volunteers is so very difficult. And I do hope, Olena, that this horrifying nightmare does end soon. And to that end, we as a Peace Corps community are continuing to do what we do, which is try to build peace, advocating to Congress and to the White House, and providing any way that we can support to family and friends and others affected by this war. So we stand with you and we pray for the best.